Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this technical presentation on HTML5. My name is Matthew Smid, and I have been working for over 10 years now with HTML5 in both web development and web design. Next slide. In this technical presentation, we'll be discussing a few of the new elements, attributes, and behaviors introduced in HTML5. As well as the new technologies that allow for more powerful, more diverse websites and web applications. HTML5 has been developed to be usable by all web developers, whether they are new to the field or experts in the field. It doesn't really matter. It's much more straightforward and easier to pick up than its predecessor, HTML4. One thing to note about HTML5 is that it has been around for over 10 years. The first official beta version of HTML5 was actually introduced in 2008, and it was in beta stages all the way up through 2014 when it was finally implemented as a standardization by the W3. Next slide. Let's talk about a few new semantics in HTML5, beginning with the section elements. The first one, the section tag, is used to define very vague groupings of content. There's no real visual representation on the web page. This is more for the author's benefit than the user's. The next one, the article tag, is used to define content that is aside from the main content. Self-contained content, so to speak. This would be if the author wishes to put a comment box or even a widget on a web page. They would use the article tag. Finally, the nav element is used to define navigational aids on a page. This would be where you would put your primary, and if you have them secondary, navigational menus. A very common example of a navigational aid is a drop-down menu. Next, let's talk about the header and footer tags. These are pretty straightforward and are used to, one, define the introductory content, such as logos, search bars, and navigational aids, and second, to define less important content that the user wants out of the way at the bottom of the web page. This could be copyright information, author information, or less important links. Moving on, let's talk about the audio and video tags. Now, the audio tag is just used to embed a soundbite onto a web page. This is normally done by linking to an external audio source or file using the src command. And one important thing to note about the audio tag is that you need to write the controls command if you want the user to have control over the audio playback. Otherwise, you'll just get audio playing, but no way to control it. In similar fashion, the video element is used to embed a video player on a web page, and it is controlled in very similar fashion to the audio tag, just with a visual element involved. Next slide. Let's talk about the canvas element. This is a completely new one to HTML5. Canvas can be used to draw both graphics and animations directly inside HTML. This has to be done using either JavaScript, or if you want something very 3D and fancy, you can use the WebGL API, which we won't go into today. As you can see on the slide, there's a very simple example of a canvas rectangle. You have the source code on the slide and you have the result. You can see that the author just defines the canvas element, names it, sets a few properties, and then inside the JavaScript uses a few simple functions to both draw the rectangle and color it. The third image on the slide, the multicolored tree branches, is just a more complicated example of something you can draw with the canvas scripting. However, it would require a lot more lines of code, and there's not enough room on a slide to fit all that. Next slide. Moving on, there are several new notable APIs that have been introduced in HTML5. The first one is the SVG tag. This now allows direct embedment of scalable vector graphics inside HTML itself. Unlike Canvas, which draws graphics on the fly, SVG defines 2D graphics inside XML. Moving on, the MathML API can be used to draw mathematical formulas and equations directly inside HTML. You'll see at the bottom of the slide a simple example of a MathML formula. You'll see that the author simply references the MathML API and uses it to draw a square root symbol and an exponent symbol. This creates a very professional looking mathematical formula without having to use any fancy scripting. Another notable API is the Web Real-Time Communication API. This allows JavaScript to create live feed connections containing both audio and visual data streams. This is done in conjunction with the Get User Media function, which allows the author to grab microphone and camera data off of the user's device and use it in conjunction with this API. This is done using the new Camera API, which was designed to be used in part with the WebRTC API. Finally, the new Geolocation API can be used to grab users' location information for web applications that need it. This is done using two main functions. The first one is called getCurrentPosition, which returns the user's current location, and watchPosition, which updates every time the user's location moves. Next slide. In conclusion, HTML5 has given us many new ways to create more dynamic and more powerful web pages and web applications that can work across all different sorts of devices: PCs, laptops, tablets, and phones. When used in conjunction with CSS3, which is the current accompanying cascading style sheet standard, HTML5 is the future of web design and development. One thing to note about HTML5 is that it will likely be around for a very long time. This is because HTML5 took over 12 years to produce and implement, and it is now a very commonly known markup language among all web developers. Thus, implementing a new standard, HTML6, would be quite a hassle and will likely not happen for quite some time. Therefore, for the foreseeable future, HTML5 is the future of web development. Thank you.